in a world where there's abundance of resources, and that someone needing not to worry about the basics, basics of like food and shelter and whatever not. But we still live in a world where that is still a wonder in some contexts as well. So we also have to talk about how AI would affect that reality as well, because that's also a reality. That's also a human experience as we see it.
Kaleab Mezgebu, or Kaleab Tesama, or Kaleab Mezgebu Tesama. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, Elvis. It's really good to be here with all my three names.
Everybody knows who you are now.
Exactly.
Locally and internationally.
Indeed, which is pretty cool.
So you are heading MinabTech,
I am.
Also known as Minab IT Solutions, if anybody wants to sue you, but common parlance is MinabTech.
Exactly. That's how we refer to ourselves.
What do you guys do?
We do a lot of software development and software integrations, outsourcing, that sort of thing.
So you guys are developers, like engineers?
Yeah, I mean, like all of us are software engineers, of course, with different backgrounds and specializations. Like we have, data team, we have, software developers, we have UI, UX, and front-end developers as well. So it's basically the whole pipeline of software developments, and we have experts for those. And we take on, software developers from mid-size to large ones, both internationally and locally. And we usually work with, government and, development partners that have a need of, softwares for reporting and also any, process functions. It really depends on the TOR they put out and the budget they have.
And you have a video editor.
Yes, we do. Yeah, actually, we have a video editor. Actually, we got a couple of them. We do, since we have a product called HaHuJobs, we kind of have to have a creative team to kind of market it, because paying for agencies can be a bit on the high side. So we treat HaHuJobs as sort of a startup. So for us to have a creative team made sense, resource wise. So that's why we have.
What is HaHuJobs? So HaHuJobs is different from MinabTech.
Yeah, I mean, it's a product of MinabTech. So it's an attempt to kind of address the labor market kind of challenges here in Ethiopia. I mean, Africa in general has a lot of youth, and there are, of course, challenges getting them into jobs. HaHuJobs is one of the attempts that we kind of are working on to kind of profile and index the data and qualifications of job seekers, and also kind of standardize the way vacancies are published. We kind of aggregate those and kind of avail it for candidates that have profiles on our platforms, and kind of create that seamless integration between candidate and also vacancies through standardization in data. So that kind of is what HaHuJobs is in kind of in summary. But it's a product that we've been working on for the past 5 years and kind of evolved into its own business or sector. So yeah, trying to work on that kind of needed a lot of marketing and also getting the word out there. So that kind of explains why we have a creative team in-house.
Okay, so you train them also?
I mean, we do. It kind of is like the same model that we kind of follow with MinabTech. It really is one of, like in MinabTech, our internship program is one of our successful programs, I would say. It's where we kind of onboard individuals with simple reading assignments and simple tasks, which we evaluate and kind of allow them to join the team for 6 to 4 months, kind of learning from senior developers or mid-level kind of developers. and then kind of graduate them to a junior developer in a span of 6 to 7 months. We kind of follow the same thing for our creative team or any of our data encoding or operations kind of team, where we kind of onboard young individuals with limited experiences, kind of give them opportunity to kind of grow. And that's, of course, a lot of betting on talent and youth in general, but we feel like it's a more sustainable way of acquiring talent. And it also kind of speaks to our succession plan, where we would always have an active team in place to kind of replace and carry on the baton whenever we were required to. And I'm proud to say that most of the people that have worked for us, either we couldn't afford to pay them anymore because they're more like their qualifications are a bit more expensive than our kind of capacity, and usually land international roles as a remote worker in almost numerous instances. I can say 80% to 90% of them kind of move on to such jobs, which for me is kind of a success point. But this speaks to not only creative roles, it also speaks to software development, UI, UX, front end, and also back end and DevOps engineers.
So you do software development with most of your guys.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the times of change currently? How do you feel about the technology changing and AI coming in? Everybody's talking about AI.
Yeah.
How do you think that's going to go? Do you have any idea or any opinion on how that's shaping up?
Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest, I mean, we started software development back in college, right? So one of the main things that inspired us was the potential, because at the time there was kind of limited kind of understanding and also limited potential of what can be achieved in software, let alone AI or any sort of automation. So at that time, PHP was becoming a bit more prominent because it was kind of one of the vanguards in web programming. I don't know if you're familiar with that. So initially we started with that, and for scripting, we kind of used to use jQuery, and then there was this shift from an architectural kind of shift to model view control, an MVC kind of model. And that was kind of the high time where we joined the workforce after graduating from college. And it was the three of us that started this MinabTech journey as a way of kind of generating income and trying to create value for businesses. So back then, the hot topics were to utilize the web in order to achieve a seamless integration between businesses that especially have multiple branches. So the fact that you can have a single access database where you can have multiple kind of functions in different kind of settings and have them all be connected through the internet was one of the amazing achievements, I would say, or one of the hot topics at that time. So we joined the workforce at that age, and one of our I think luck and also a good market fit when we started MinabTech was that. So from then it kind of shifted and evolved into cloud, because it's kind of that client server kind of potential kind of evolved into cloud, because maintaining service and reliability and dependability. I really don't want to bother you with the details of the pros and cons of using cloud in premise deployment. And through that time, it evolved to cloud. That's why most of our solutions are kind of as services or solutions built on cloud infrastructures. So shifting from that now, software development has evolved so much that JavaScript to a point where it kind of started as a supporting kind of thing now to becoming the main driver of software development in general. And I think that's exactly what's kind of happening with AI as well, because software development in automation in general has advanced so much with such limited amount of time because of the cloud infrastructure and also this internet connectivity and the abundance of its access created. And I think that created a massive amount of data that all the software functions were collecting in different contexts, of course. So we have the social medias, we have the automated emails, we have the process automation in businesses where each of them are actively capturing data on databases, making it, making data a lot more accessible and also a lot more abundant, where you can actually start to pick out trends and also pick out patterns of how how things would go, because you have so much data from it. And I think that at the start of it, AI had a different name. I may be wrong, but big data was at that time the kind of common reference to it. And you can imagine the big shots in Silicon Valley, the amount of data they have kind of amassed over the years of this cloud solutions and automations. It basically training people to utilize software for any kind of process and actually making it virtual is, I think, the kind of foundation of AI. So that's what I believe in, and that's what I also have my skepticism built on, because it's heavily built on history, on what happened. This can be really good for factual kind of things, but is it something that kind of something that we can rely on for future things? Is also something that remains to be seen. So in AI and how things would kind of go for me is that it's an output of our history in terms of like services, development, and also a trend of activities in different contexts. Of course, you have social media, like I said, and also business functions and operations in general. Unless it's kind of scoped into a way where it kind of serves a specific purpose, I think the fact that it would be this utopia of like automations is, for me, a bit far-fetched. And I say this because it really depends on data, which is capturing history of things. And history of things could help you at least understand what the future could hold, but could actually kind of predict it and set directions to it. I mean, I sit here waiting to be surprised on what outcomes of that process would look like. Because intelligence is beyond memory, because there's intuition, understanding, feeling, and senses. And I think AI lacks that, in my belief. And that's when, I don't know if you remember, in Berlin, we had that conversation about consciousness, because consciousness is kind of a combination and kind of a melting point in that regard. And that's why we have, not generated images or multimedia. That's why we have art as a human being. That's why we have, movements, expressions, emotions. And I think AI lacks that. So that's why I am very much skeptical in terms of replacing intelligence on a human note. So yeah, there's a lot of buzz in AI. But from my foundational understanding and also shift, this is kind of my take on it.
Right. So do you remember the first time you used generative AI? Like you kind of just checked out ChatGPT back in 2022, 23. That was interesting though, right? Like it was something where you're like, oh, okay, wow, it can do this now, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, of course, there was some kind of surprises to it. I mean, the fact that, you can just put something and then kind of would get some sort of resemblance to whatever prompt that you kind of had was definitely unheard of. But the lack of accuracy and also the lack of originality, I would say, is what put me off. Because you can go out there in the same streets that you were there and then kind of capture 3, 5 photos, and then you can also ask ChatGPT to kind of capture that. But my kind of sense or reaction at that time was, yeah, I mean, this is cool, but it also kind of looks like what you see on the internet or from what a Google search would put up. So that's just the only kind of critique or criticism that I had. But for a scoped purposes, like I said, for a specific kind of need, of course, you can see a lot of multiple use cases in that regard. So understanding that is one of the values that I had, I would say, trying out ChatGPT or any of the AIs that that we had access to. But initially, ChatGPT was not available up until its full release, because I think it was only available for in X number of countries, and Ethiopia was not one of them. But after a while, of course, we got access and got a chance to try it out.
So you told me your dad is an artist, right?
He is.
What does he do?
My dad is a painter. Like he has this style of realistic fantasy. It's like painting your childhood dream, basically. Like how you would have a realistic but fantasy-like kind of engagements. Something sort of like what you'd see in Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones kind of thing. But of course, in a very much Habesha kind of context, very, very Ethiopian and very rural Ethiopian. So yeah, that's kind of his way of painting things. And yeah, that has a lot of impact in my life, because growing up with an artist is he's always in front of a canvas and always covered. His studio was covered with paintings, and yeah, it was a very much my childhood was full of images and also kind of giving things to meanings, even in the simplest ponds or potholes in the street.
Is that a painting behind you? Is that one of his, or?
Yeah. It's one of his works. Yeah.
All right. So, what could you use AI for, or what do you use AI for? If you're saying, because I'm trying to grapple with it myself, I'm trying to understand. Okay, it sounds pretty good. It sounds really nice. And then when you roll your sleeves up and you dig in, then there's a lot of fluff around it when it writes for you. So there's actually still, or let me not say still, there might always be this difference between something that's razor sharp and something that's new and something that's mimicked, that's pseudo, that's just regurgitated. So the labs, the leaders of the labs are saying, yeah, that's just right now. We're getting phenomenally fast, better. And the things that you've just said, chess players used to say it, Go players used to say it, until they didn't anymore, because they couldn't deny it, that this thing is just superhuman. So it's just a matter of time that this is coming. So we're not that young, but you and I were also not that old. So if you think forward, now it's 2025, if you think forward to 2040, do you still think, nah, it's not going to be that great? It's going to do all kinds of things, but it's still not going to be anywhere near what a human expert or a human artist can do?
Yeah. To address your first question of like, how do you use or what do you use AI for? We have a very specific kind of use cases for it, and it's not lack of like use or understanding. We just have, I don't know if you recall, how we made HaHuJobs was through convenience of like access to information or access to data, because to this day in Ethiopia, vacancies are posted on job boards, like literally physical job boards. And for us, one of the idea or the principles behind it was to kind of create this access to information. So I say this because we do a lot of aggregation from both manual and also virtual or digital kind of sources information, and then we kind of aggregate them and try to make a a kind of a standard for vacancy publication, so that you have at least a predictable way of like finding a job. And this creates a massive amount of data. For our case, it's like 200 to 250,000 kind of vacancies, which we have kind of indexed from a different sort of format, like something that was used to be on a Gazette or a paper kind of based, and something that used to be a picture of a job board, and something that used to have like very minimal kind of description on a website. So this amount of data that you want AI to kind of enrich in a way, and also kind of have a predictive kind of pattern where you no longer need your data encoders to kind of set the parameters for that vacancy in order for it to be published on your platform, following, of course, a strict set of KPIs. So in that specific use case, we usually have this AI that helps us kind of highlight the fields of studies, years of experience, skills that are required to do so, and also set the classification based on occupation standards that we're kind of trying to adapt from the European and also the US. I think the US is called ONETH and the European is called ESCO. So we're trying to kind of classify those vacancies, and we used to do it with manual labor. We used to have a team of 4 or 5 people that kind of take a description, either digital or manual, and try to kind of classify and index it based on KPIs that we define. So since we have sort of an AI trained on that, it quickly kind of captures and also classifies it. So we're trying to kind of perfect that so that we can, save cost and also increase our efficiency, because we can focus on sourcing the information and making it easier and putting it into our pre-published kind of database, where the AI can classify and republish it with the standards that we have defined so far. But keep in mind that this AI use, of course, requires our prior experience of categorizing and standardizing vacancies, which we use to kind of train that specific model to kind of handle and identify in that term. So my ideal use case for these specific learning models, of course, but I don't know the rational ones, the ones that are called the reasoning models, but at least the large LLMs and if you have such kind of redundant kind of use cases, I think it is one of the best applications of AI, because it's predictable, makes it very much easier to kind of correct, because the solutions or the issues that you place them on are not that complicated to have some corrections and also checks and balance in place. And also you can kind of distill train as well, because whatever they have outputted, if you find mistakes, you can actually refine it and then actually confidently say, hey, I think this AI is kind of getting the way we were doing things. And for us, this took more than now 2 years, and we're still actively trying to improve that process. So in such kind of contexts, we use AI, and that's kind of the directions that I believe AI is best suited for. But in terms of like speculations on, okay, where would this go, or how we're going to kind of see this unfold, of course, remains to be seen in terms of the amount of application, the amount of even impact this AI would have in order for us to kind of predict what comes next, because in a world even where we perfect our version of AI, there would be 4 data encoders that would lose their job immediately, because that is the first cost cutting that we have forward. And I'm just giving it to you in a very simple terms, because that's my real world experience of implementing AI. Aside from, sitting down and then having it generate this run-on sentences that have little to no use of defining what someone is actually trying to say, but saying it in so many words that you get confused. But in such kind of scoped kind of use cases, I think AI has so much potential in automating redundant and sometimes this mundane kind of activities that can be replaced. And I think you see it a lot in factories and all of these, production facilities where that can be so much useful. And I think the initial kind of intention for AI is that to kind of boost manufacturing. And I think China is a huge manifestation of that with their dark factories. And that is, I think, where AI can excel and produce a lot of consumable products that us humans use on a day-to-day kind of basis, making it convenient, very much abundant, and also making it, how would you say, a lot more accessible. Because I don't know, 15 years ago, even in my age, an electric car is just something of a science fiction kind of thing. But now I think it's becoming so common that even the companies that produce them are one of the greatest in the world. So it's a huge shift even for our understanding, even with my age. And you can imagine what my dad feels like with this social media kind of proliferation, that everyone having access to their own version of media. And it's like individualistic kind of propaganda that everyone has access to, that is confusing the world, and which eventually is going to feed into AI as well. And we might eventually end up in this chaotic society where nothing kind of feels real as well. And I think we're already heading there, but I think AI is going to enable that to a point where it's hard to recognize what is real and what is not. So that's kind of my speculation to like specific implementation of AI.
Yeah. Is it weird that we're living in this time, or did it always feel weird? I mean, to be in a time of progress or in a time of change. I'm wondering, it must have felt really weird for the first village where somebody took a branch from a burning tree and actually kept that fire alive in the center of the village, and that kept the wolves away, and you could digest your food better, fry your food on it. That must have felt phenomenally different. Like life was so different before fire and after fire.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, then, if we move fast forward, like printing press or steam engine or electricity. And then I remember internet, you said, electric cars was a thing of the future, right? It's funny how they make these humming noises now, the way we had them in the science fiction movies. They do them on purpose so that people can hear them coming.
Yeah.
But I remember just before Steve Jobs came out with the iPhone, I heard some experts say that you can't have touch screens because it's physically not possible to have to make that work.
Exactly.
To have a touch screen. So you're always going to have buttons on your phone.
Yeah.
And then it just changed, right?
Exactly.
So this fast change, is it weirder now than it was in the past, or do you think it was just always weird that technology just changed our lives?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you remember our conversation in Berlin, man. We had this conversation about the horses in the stables and how that industry kind of evolved. So the iPhone kind of killed an industry that Nokia excelled in. The button kind of phones, where they used to come up with new ones and that addressed a variety and an array of markets. And Nokia was one of the most valuable kind of companies until it's not. So the iPhone kind of gave us the world of Apple while it killed the world of Blackberries and also Nokia. So that's exactly what I think AI would do as well. So whomever is kind of utilizing it and kind of positioning themselves in that direction, of course, they would have a different reality, a different role in life and role in business in general. And while the ones that kept or are on the opposite side of that kind of development would be run on, just like what happened with Nokia and BlackBerry. And if you remember our conversation with New York and their horses and carriages, and how that kind of evolved into fuel being the main driver of cars, and eventually fuel becoming one of the most demanded and highly traded kind of commodity that kind of changed an entire globe from, you know, a very poor Middle Eastern kind of countries to this concrete parks that we always hear and see on the news about. Cities like Dubai and countries like Qatar and Kuwait were kind of a development or kind of success stories or kind of alternative reality to what could happen whenever there is this shift in paradigm of what could be used as a fuel. So if you remember, we talked about how stables kind of changed into garages and how you know, horse keepers or stable keepers kind of turned into mechanics. And now we have this concept of car that we build infrastructures around. Like roads are basically designed for cars, not even walking, right? But now, again, we've evolved into this society where we're conscious about energy and consumption, and that convenience kind of increased the amount of population there is in the world. And now we're aware of that and trying to kind of reduce, and that's why electric cars are a thing as well. So it's just like I said, AI is also the same kind of phenomena, just like the fire in the village. There would be numerous kind of effects and directions that would be took when such phenomena kind of happen. So I don't know if I'm romanticizing this a lot, but I think, you know, a lot of the changes AI has made would be kind of seen in terms of manufacturing and also in terms of direct implementation of technologies that we used to have challenges on. But then there would also be a different role of individuals and role of businesses that kind of align with that change.
But do you see the change? And I'm coming back to the question. I'm not letting you off the hook with the 2040 question.
Okay.
Do you see the change getting more? Like, are you see like these ideas are built on top of other ideas? So many things are happening currently. So I see the first robo taxis and the Waymos and self-driving cars, which has a whole other implication in terms of how many cars do we actually need. If they can be constantly rolling, we don't need any parking garages anymore, so that the world changes in that sense. But then there's so many different areas that are, some of them are probably hype in the short term, but many of them will probably come through. So many different innovations, and kind of generative AI being, in terms of the investment in that sector anyway, being at the top of them, right? Like, so I just want to kind of pin you down there.
Yeah.
If the change is fast, and right now I would agree with you that generative AI is a bit, you know, flat in terms of, you know, I'm not going to read AI written poetry. But for example, songs, if you look at Suno, it's making songs. I don't know. It sounds pretty good. To what extent would I make a playlist and listen to that instead of something that humans made? I haven't yet, so that I guess speaks for itself. Everybody's always talking about how great AI is, but then to what extent are you actually replacing humans in your own life? So one other point, and I'll shut up about this. One other point is a friend of mine, we talked about journal submissions. Right? How many articles are getting submitted to journals by researchers? And we're just waiting for that explosion, because the moment AI is indecipherable from humans, every Tom, Dick, and Harry is going to submit journal articles because everybody wants to get their doctor title or whatever it is, right? So they want to publish 10 papers at once in 10 different journals before they shut that whole scientific process down for humans, because you can't give people titles for prompting faster than others. But it hasn't happened yet, right? And you sound like you're not surprised. I mean, that's, you know, how could an AI do research?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, here's the thing, man. We're already seeing the changes that like AI has an impact on. I mean, one of the really good kind of examples is the competition between Tesla and the BYD in electric kind of manufacturing as well. Now in China, they've got down to like dark factories where they can produce like a vehicle in 36 seconds. I mean, it's a claim. I mean, they seem like they're achieving it, and we've seen the impact. It's producing a really
What's that? What I didn't. I missed the shot. I missed that. They producing vehicles in 36 seconds.
seconds, yes, because like they produce a vehicle in every 36
Oh,
seconds.
okay. It comes out but
Every
they're not
36,
from
yeah.
beginning to end. Not yet.
No, no,
Okay.
no, no. Like
I
every 36 seconds, they have a car rolling down. I think it's Xiaomi's new kind of vehicle, and it's a vehicle that kind of looks like the Porsche Taycan kind of thing, with the same kind of performance, with the same kind of agility and capacity, and it's being sold for half of the price. So that's where China came in as an industry leader in the EV market. So, I mean, we're already seeing the changes in AI. I don't know what people are actually expecting, because whomever is leading on AI would definitely be leading in manufacturing. And manufacturing has led the world for over, I don't know, like decades or hundreds of years. The kind of the direction, or kind of the how would you say, the power kind of dynamics have already been like set in whomever kind of has the capacity to kind of produce and has the capacity to kind of create commodities of value that kind of drives the economy. So whomever is leading in that is going to lead the global kind of order in general. And I think our world, whether we like it or not, is built on resources. And AI is a means to an end, accumulating resources and accumulating value. So I don't know, like whether you push it to 2040 and whatever not, if roads are no longer kind of viable and we have to have flying cars, it would be the case. If kind of apartments like should be more than like 100 stories, and now we have the capacity of actually building a new foundation on a, I don't know, like 100 meters elevation, whatever not, because now we have the AI to calculate all of that wind tilt and everything that, you know, the New Yorkers have, like the architects of New York have. Then we'd have those as well. And given the fact that the population is actually rising and not in the world not getting bigger, of course we're going to have those kind of improvements. Like we would inhabit areas that were deemed inhabitable. We would work on areas that were deemed unlivable. We would have habitats that were deemed unlivable by, you know, current kind of capacity of humanity to be livable. I think one of the hot topics are actually moving to Mars, or kind of making travel to Mars kind of possible. So I think AI would enable that in so many kind of ways. It could be in producing the tools that would enable this, in producing, for example, if you're walking around with a machine that could produce, you know, machine parts that would wear off mid-flight, then that's one AI impact. But here I'm just speculating in sort of a sci-fi kind of model, but I'm sure, you know, with this like means to an end kind of thing, I'm definitely sure this would be the direction in the next 40 years or 45 years. Because let's be honest, like we're getting too many for the world, and there would be a means of AI's role, or there would be AI's role in mitigating that, like creating more space for more people in already like kind of scoped or limited kind of spaces that we have. And this speaks to a lot of resource management, like in nations' capacity to kind of support that. And we also have to understand that you and I are having this conversation, and I'm in a nation where the next meal is kind of a wonder as well. So we need to solve those as well, because we need to have that ground where realities are not the same for each kind of human human diversity, I would say, because some of these things that we are talking about are in a world where there's abundance of resources, and that someone needing not to worry about the basics, basics of like food and shelter and whatever not. But we still live in a world where that is still a wonder in some contexts as well. So we also have to talk about how AI would affect that reality as well, because that's also a reality. That's also a human experience as we see it. So considering that, having that balance would give a really better vision of 2020, 40, or any basics of like food and shelter and whatever not. But we still live in a world where that is still a wonder in some contexts as well. So we also have to talk about how AI would affect that reality as well, because that's also a reality. That's also a human experience as we see it. So considering that, having that balance would give a really better vision of 2020, 40, or any years down that road. So that's kind of my take on that.
But you still think humans will remain in charge. It's not going to become a move away from being a tool to becoming an overlord or something, like an entity that would get smarter than us, better than us, and then whether or not it's alive, it is just the thing that decides what happens. Whether or not that's good or bad for us is to be seen. You see any timeline in which that occurs, or do you think, nah, that's just total sci-fi? This thing is just like a vacuum cleaner, and it's a bit more complex, but it's next token prediction, and that's just what it's going to be.
No. So I'm like, I have a balanced kind of vision. I'm not going to reduce it down to to vacuum cleaners and to that level. And I'm not going to hype it up to be the next God mode of directions as well. Because like I said, there should be a balance of like, okay, like what would a machine with that requires massive amount of electricity and a huge computing power would do in the remotest areas in Ethiopia. That's where I go to refresh. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the reality that we need to understand as well. So what if that, kind of resources were not there? What if we lost our power grids? What if the old directions that we kind of were thinking in terms of cheap manufacturing and computing kind of direction changes because of AI? Like, what if AI comes up with a better chip manufacturing kind of models? All of these are kind of things that would steer this conversation in a more kind of guided and channeled way. So it really is really hard to have that vision of a computer like leading the way, or any sort of, how'd you say, any sort of directional kind of role, but it would definitely have an assisting role for a long haul, at least until the point where I would hit the ground. So that's kind of my vision, because like I said, like people would always kind of dream and have that thought horizon based on their experiences. So my experience comes from understanding what poverty looks like, and then what technology can kind of have a role on that. So that's one of my passions in actually getting into this field in general. And then AI being part of that sector as well, I have to be realistic and have a balanced vision of, okay, where AI would have a role in assisting, then kind of offering directions. That's kind of my take on it. But in terms of like fantasizing and speculating on what could be or what could be potentially, my thought would always kind of comes down to scoped kind of understanding. I don't think there would ever be a prompt that would allow me to set like, hey, Siri or whatever, uh, feel this, and then I would have a sort of some kind of output. So I would be interested in that world where I would put that prompt and see what that output would look like. If you ask me, I genuinely don't know if I would get the performance of it or actually the actual emotion feeling that you and I would feel. You and I would feel tired. You and I would feel happy. And you and I would feel joyful. I mean, to a point where we created poetry to the depth and the complexities of a feeling and emotions, no? So I would live to see a world where that could be mimicked in any sort of way or direction. So that's kind of the, how do you say, the tug that I have in my head of balancing that vision and also digging deep dive into this utopia that we create in our head, like AI is going to solve the problem. I don't know if you know that term, like that the pageant queens would always say world peace whenever they're asked what they want. So yeah, I mean, I really find it hard to kind of speculate in that direction. But that's me, you know. Who am I? I'm just a random tech guy in Ethiopia that has some kind of limited understanding on even the sectors that I'm in.
Yeah.
But unless I'm being arrogant and kind of claiming boldly something, if I have to really sit down, consider, and also reflect on things, there is a lot of things in play, and there is a lot of like realistic things in the world that would limit me to kind of speculate beyond what I have now.
Yeah, so you're an engineer, right? You're a builder. You're somebody who builds stuff. And I know you mentioned that, you know, there's a lot of poverty. There's if I look at the graphs of human development, economic development over the last 200 years, they're phenomenally different than any time before, right? And it started in England and then it, you know, went to other places, but then the countries that are coming back at the tail end, their drop in child mortality and rise in life expectancy is even faster than the speed was initially in England, right? So that is this weird time where we kind of moved away from the x-axis and towards the y-axis, where things are changing faster than, it's just over the course of one generation, you're seeing such huge change. Like it's like a development explosion. It's only that our lifespans are so short that we can't see that we're in the middle of an explosion, right? Like if we zoomed out historically, 200 years is nothing. And if we look at Ethiopia, I mean, since the 1990s, what the development that's happened is, you know, or not to speak of like, so early 1990s, there's this fast development that started. And so many things changed for the positive that were, I mean, for the longest time, Ethiopia was the poster country for economic development, for this fast catch-up development. It was always Ethiopia and Rwanda, right? Maybe China was up there, but those two countries were like the fastest, Botswana too, but those were the fastest growing countries in the last 30 years. And so much change has happened also with new technology, right? So this is what I'm thinking about, like you building things with people and for people using AI on the one hand, and on the other hand, you hear of Ethiopia and Myanmar are the two examples where social media has been used in terrible ways, right? So where the algorithms amplified hate speech in ways that weren't planned by the platforms, and they had no clue what was happening and how, and what powerful tools for evil those platforms could also be. The algorithms amplifying what people want to see or what people can see, what draws people to the feed, right? So those are like, both those things are happening in Ethiopia at the same time. For me, it's just, I mean, I don't know how has that been for you growing up in that country? Just such phenomenal change. Like if I talk about change in Germany, it's nothing compared to what happened in Ethiopia in the last 30 years.
It's sometimes surreal and sometimes it's kind of organic. I mean, we have a very large population, a very complex country with complex population and history as well. So it has a lot to do with that background as well, and we have to kind of look at a lot of variables to kind of comprehend whatever is happening here in Ethiopia, specifically based on my experience, of course. But it's not, like only AI. Any advancement in technology kind of has an impact in humanity. I think wherever we have achieved a certain kind of thing, it's just like first discovering a solution and then making it cheaper so that it has, like, everyone has access to it. I think that's one of the examples would be healthcare, right? We have very low mortality rate as compared to previous times, which kind of creates a lot more people. I think in this day and age, I think surviving is the challenge, right? Like it's the challenge is surviving, not coming to the world. But I think in the previous ages, it's much easier to survive because there's less variables to kind of understand. But in our modern day, there's kind of complexities that we created with our technologies that made surviving in a sound kind of environment very, very difficult. And I think that has to do with a lot with the number of population and also the economic direction. And I think Ethiopia is no different as well. We had a growing population and not so much a well-performing economy. And that has a lot to do with, lack of stability for the past kind of 40 years. And that has a lot of, socio-political kind of explanations, but I'm going to focus on development since, that's the topic and theme of our conversation. With, technology, there's more access, there's more to be achieved. I mean, there has been a strive in education, a strive in healthcare, and also a strive in social kind of support or social infrastructure kind of support, and this kind of led the agriculture to be more. This kind of also paved way for international practices, and all of that kind of trickled down into this thing that we call economic development. And all of these experiences, of course, has to do a lot with social media and also understanding of the world. So for me, technology is sort of a gateway. Whatever I build is kind of a gateway to the international context for an average Ethiopian. And that has its own version of evolvement. I think one of the really good things that I would raise is, since you may be familiar with it, is HaHuJobs. So we already have in Ethiopian traditional kind of music and whatever not, but kind of give a version of that. I think that's exactly what happened with technology as well. So we took and adapted it and then kind of gave it our version, which kind of fueled, like I said, the points that you talked about, like hate speeches, and it's basically, it kind of served the context there. And this has nothing to do with the algorithms as well, because they have no understanding of what the Amharic kind of, context is. They can only see the reactions of it. So this brings me to AI and my context of understanding, So when it comes to these algorithms understanding that context, they only looked at the number of reactions, the number of comments there is, and the amount of engagement there is, which in their sense push this higher because it's something of interest, because they genuinely, each of these things were not trained on the context of Ethiopia, nor understand the history and the complexity and the type of people that are actually utilizing this platform. Where in the USA, it's actually very different, and in European, the same case. So if there hasn't been much of an investment in contextualizing things, I think this kind of problems would also affect any sort of development. But living through these changes, for me, is just like understanding and defining the causes of it was a bit more challenging than comprehending with the amount of changes there is. Because for me, one paved road doesn't, how do you say it, doesn't characterize a development in the context of the humans or the Ethiopians, that my fellow Ethiopians that I live and hang out with. My question is, like, is the population as evolved as the paved road, is my question. Is the understanding a bit modern? Is the individuals are more caring? Have we learned to sympathize? Have we tried to acquire more or understood a bit better so that we can kind of have a way to live amongst each other, you know what I mean? Like to kind of respect and also understand the common good and work towards it. So in that sense of things, I believe we have a long way to go. But in terms of materials and also infrastructure kind of thing, Ethiopia is one of the greatest manifestation of what, you know, development can look like. But I think the human aspect, the social aspect of things is very much lacking. Even if the penetration of technology didn't help that, it actually helped aggravate those problems. So the way I look at it and the way I see those changes is that way. What good is a building that is not kept clean? If the population there is not keeping that building clean, it's as bad as a hut, because that understanding was not there. And you see this quite a lot, actually. A lot of investments in infrastructure, in beautifying a certain building. And 6 months, 7 months down the line, you see it going back to its African theme, you know? So that's kind of my take on development, but I think I'm speaking a lot on this topic specifically. But witnessing the changes is for me is just left the people behind, or the psychology or the understanding is left behind. I think this focus on monetary values or infrastructure kind of left people with resources that they rarely know how to handle.
Yeah. I'm also asking you this at a time, and I mean, you and I have never spoken about the war, and I'm asking you, I was last in Ethiopia in 2019, and then shortly after the war broke out, so it's a bit audacious of me to ask you about Ethiopia's great development if we've had 5 years of war. I don't know how is that going? How? I mean, we can cut this out. I don't know if you want to talk about this, but it's been, yeah, for me, all my studies growing up, looking at development, economic development, you know, the Ethiopia of Meles and Haile but specifically Meles, that was that was really the leader that, you know, you could see, okay, was everybody profiting equally? Sure, no. But compared to other countries, compared to, I mean, any country in the region besides maybe Rwanda, which had a similar trajectory, right? It was phenomenal growth. And then to come apart like that was heartbreaking, of course, from an outsider's perspective. But for you to, I don't know if you want to speak about this, but for you to live through it, and I mean to some extent to still be in it, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's just like the sad part in Ethiopia is just most of our wars are very cyclic. I don't know if you've noticed it. If like as soon as like the modern Ethiopia kind of started, and then right after the imperial of Ethiopia has ended, there has been wars fought in different contexts. And the ugliest aspect of it is that we tend to kind of fight amongst each other. I think that's what really is the core problem. It's the fact that we enforce this through violence, and there's no tradition of like civil discourse, you know, and I think that has to do a lot with you know, the directions and the way leaders kind of took to kind of implement that. But in terms of like talking about like wars and challenges, to be completely honest, it's just the way that stability was achieved for the past 30 years or 40 years of whichever leadership was in power was not the right way of, or I wouldn't say the right way, or is in kind of a questionable direction on achieving that stability. And that stability was a balance of that was achieved through bickering of X group with Y group. And in the silos of that kind of grievances, someone in the Z group was benefiting and achieving that stability, that kind of led the that enabled kind of the economic growth, because stability is one of the key requirements for anyone to kind of do something productive, right? So in that 30 years of era of stability, definitely has been a lot more kind of growth and a lot more kind of achievement. And it's not even about the question of, economical balance and whatever not. The way that stability was achieved was questionable. And then I think the recent war was a repercussion of that. And that kind of disrupted a lot of developments and also directions that were on course as well. And I think we're living through the aftermath of that questionable method that kind of gave rise to a conflicting nation, I think. And I think that we have a long way of reconciling that aspect. It's always like wars would always kind of build another grievance that is kind of bound to kind of erupt in X period of time. So my question is, like, this government has a homework of achieving that stability. And when that stability is achieved, two things remain still unanswered. How would that stability be achieved? And will it again bear another kind of seed for another war, is kind of the...
You mean if the stability is achieved based on oppression rather than
Yes,
consensus?
I mean, not only oppression, it's just through kind of bickering of ethnic groups that kind of swayed from the fact that there's a massive amount of corruption, imbalance of power in economics. I mean, that's not new in Africa generally, but this way of achieving it is actually new to Africa generally, or any nation as well, because I think the Soviet Union suffered from the same problems of this kind of disassociated kind of grouping. And I think Ethiopia kind of suffered from that as well. I think that eventually kind of erupted in this way, because if you have regional states that are based on ethnic groups, I mean, this is kind of bound to happen eventually, because any ethnic group that was in power would definitely benefit more, and that would definitely resent fuels. But the only problem is, if the ethnic group in power is also baiting the rest of the ethnic groups with one another, whenever that regime kind of falls, the ones that were baited would bicker for power as well. And I think that's exactly what happened in the previous war. And when that happens, it's not only technology development and whatnot, it's humanity that suffers. If humanity is suffering, I mean, talking about like building stuff and the luxury of it is kind of, how would you say, a far-fetched kind of concept.
If you say ethnic groups bickering, I sometimes wonder, how are we going to square this circle? Because we have the European Union, and the European Union doesn't really have much say. The nation states are still, the individual states are still deciding most of the things. If we had elections in Brussels and I could vote for, either a German or a Frenchman or a Brit, not anymore, but, or an Italian, most Germans would probably vote ethnically. whether or not they like Germans better. Most Germans like Germans better than French people. It's just how people are, right? And also they would want to have the resources in their ethnic group. So I think, a lot of African countries are just a microcosm of what the European Union looks like, with the difference that everybody assumes that Addis can work where nobody assumes that Brussels could work, in the sense that whoever runs the capital is going to call the shots over the other groups. There needs to be some kind of, like you said, maybe implicitly some kind of maybe checks and balances between the groups. And also we can acknowledge that we are different groups, right? We can't have it the way we had it in the past, where the strongest group would just, take over, pillage and rape and just burn down villages and just, this is our place now. And that's how the borders in Europe became so rigid. So they look like a stock market. They're so zigzaggy. Whereas the borders in Africa is just, straight down the line and saying, well, you guys are a country now, right? It's not, fighting over borders is a natural process that we've had throughout humanity. And I understand the concept that we don't want to have this now, that whoever is the strongest can just take over the neighboring countries. But the alternative also doesn't really work that well, right? Like, we have to somehow find a way to get along. It's really hard when, whatever group wins the capital. That's why we don't know how many people we have, because we don't want to have a census, because we don't want to have the place blow up because of the census, right? We don't want to count the people, because then one group actually finds out that they're large, or before the census, there's cleansing, so those are things we just don't want to deal with in many countries, because we don't want to rock the boat. And I could totally understand why. Like, I'm always I don't have much time for people who are just very critical of, of not having a census. I would just say, it's about 135 million. Let's just leave it there, because we don't want to count every single one of them. It's just like, it's going to be trouble,
Yeah, I mean, it's the what I feel could have been done better is we shifted from, district-based kind of bordering to ethnic-based kind of bordering. And I think that is kind of what fueled the divide a lot more. Of course, people would have reasons and also their kind of philosophies on why that should happen. But I think in hindsight, we've seen what that would look like and what that produced. And I'm definitely sure for even the winning side, this is kind of a comfortable kind of way of evolving things. So I think that method was questionable, but I think it's proven to be wrong after what happened, to even kind of give evidence on why that was wrong as well. So like I said, borders are okay, so long as you draw them with the context of like territories. But if you drew them around ethnic groups and actually kind of evaded what used to be kind of territorial to kind of an ethnic kind of context, that's, I think, where the problem started with the Ethiopian, generally challenges. And it's so sad that I cannot sit here and like talk to you about like, challenges in development and areas and it's like, because Ethiopia is blessed with resources and in abundance of kind of human capital. We're just so into the ego and also this ethnically kind of divided kind of context is that couldn't enable us to kind of utilize the full potential of the nation. And at that, in times where these things were not a matter, it showed, and we showed how Ethiopia can actually contribute to the globe. So considering that, Elvis, I would say, yeah, I mean, the challenges of Ethiopia is pretty, complex and also very hard to kind of comprehend in a single kind of conversation, because there are, books and researches that went into it that didn't even cover much of it at Even didn't even put a dent to the scopes and depths of the problem. But what I would say is that us shifting from the way borders were drawn to that ethnic kind of context kind of gave this us and them kind of context to every individual that cannot relate to the Ethiopianism that was defined over thousands of years ago. And I think that's kind of the problem, where if you don't have that state mentality and nation mentality, it really is hard for you to kind of strive to any kind of technological or AI driven or any sort of development you can think of. I think those are fundamental, and I think currently in Ethiopia it's very much lacking.
So I'm always baffled at when people say AI is going to take all the jobs, because I think we have so many problems in the world that we need to solve these problems with better technology. Now, whether humanity is becoming kinder with better technology, or the technology is moving forward, but we remain primitive and vicious and brutal, I don't know. I like to think that we're becoming the better angels of our nature. We're becoming better people. But if we want to use this new technology now to create more wealth on the ground, right? Go out there beyond Addis and just go into the rural areas or the secondary cities and use these tools that we're creating now that we can apply to local problems. How would you do that? How would you go out and, I mean, so would it have to be like would it have to be there's Tigray, Oromo and Amhara, right? So the three big groups, right? Would it have to be separated, or can we kind of somehow do it in? Could you roll out something that unites people in terms of, because the people are so young, right? On average, what's the average age? It's 18, right? Yeah. So even as terrible as it has been for the last 5 years for so many people, that was their teenage years, which was terrible, but we can still have a good future. I'm not getting out a good question here, but I'm just trying to think of what can we build with technology that can bring people to a better place, be that just in terms of living standards, but also to give people a baseline to say, okay, this is actually better than it was a couple of years ago. And whether or not that will make, people stop fight over borders and stop fight over resources, I don't know. I tend to think that the richer we get, the harder it is to fight, but I don't know if that's true, because war is coming to Europe too again. So I used to think, we just need development and then everything else will follow. Let me bring you back to AI and the technological progress that we're seeing right now. How do we bring that? You mentioned poverty reduction, right? You mentioned like rural areas. How do we bring that beyond the capital cities and into the hands of people? Maybe not in the hands of people, but how do we use the advances that we have right now to find the next genius that is in somewhere in the rural areas that would otherwise, be overlooked?
Yeah. So to be completely honest with you, man, my approach is more kind of realistic. It's just helping the ones that are closer so that they can bring it down to the affiliates of in those specific rural areas or more inaccessible kind of areas in Ethiopia or any African context. So what I'm technically getting at is if I support any of the farm coordinators in the rural cities or secondary kind of cities, bring more information on harvesting and really good kind of crops, and also what kind of crop rotations there is to bring it closer to the farmers. That's kind of technology, getting a lip. So my principle is that support whomever is the closest. Instead of you kind of trying to build all of this complicated tech and infrastructure to kind of address the ones with limited access, which are many, of course, but if you support the ones that are actually closest to that demographic, I think it would go the long way. That's why we at HaHuJobs, we have this direction where we collect this vacancy information from rural areas through university students that are already going there, kind of giving us that information so that we can also vend it back to whomever access to the internet in that specific area. Part of our categorization has to do a lot with demographics as well, with city specific and job area and that sort of thing. And I think that's the really best way of getting at it, and it can also create people that move out from that demographics, of course, because if you help 100 farmers in this context, the next day the 15 of them might understand enough to impact another 100 as well. So it's kind of a trickling down method where whatever implementations that you may have through AI or any technology kind of solutions, you help the ones that are closest to the challenges and the demographic that you're targeting. So for me, I don't see the value and the complexity of addressing this very hard kind of challenges like rural area, limited access to the power even, let alone kind of connectivity. You just support the ones that could get to them, and through that any kind of economic development would increase access and eventually get those roads and power grids to those demographics that you're targeting. So I think that's kind of the strategy and the targets that usually works. And I think Ethiopia is exceptionally kind of good in terms of serving infrastructure to even the remotest areas. It would surprise you the coverages that are available, both in power grid and also the Ethio Telecom services. And part of the choices of making these primary infrastructures to be owned and governed by the government kind of creates this equitable kind of direction that is not profit-led but access-led kind of things as well. So that sort of approach kind of worked. I think it's not even a direction that is invented by Ethiopia. I think it's invented by China because of the socialist kind of theme they got going on. So so that's kind of my take on things in terms of building things for the ones that are closest, so that it can kind of trickle down to your target demographics. That's kind of my point said in so many different ways.
All right. I'll be there in September.
Yeah. And we'd expect you.
Where are you from initially? Like, where are your grandparents? Where do you?
I was born and raised in Addis Ababa, but my dad is from a district called Noari, which is in northern Shawa district. Which is now in terms of region, the Amhara region, and my grandparents and from that side is Tag, and my mom is she was raised in Addis, but her parents were from now modern day Eritrea, but at that time it was part of Ethiopia as well. But she was born there and came here, and on her side I would say I'm from far north, but I was born and raised in the center of Ethiopia, which is Addis Ababa.
So Ethiopian food is my favorite food in the world. And I don't say that to everybody who I talk to from their country, but the Ethiopian, like injera, is just, I could eat that 3 times a day. It's just so special. It's so like East Africa, going to Rwanda or Kenya. I haven't been to Ethiopia in a while, so even there, Ethiopian restaurants are so good. And it's just the culture of, it's just something to sit around and just eat from the same plate and just, and as the food is so good. It's a special kind of sharing. It's just really something that the culture is interesting, and it's like the coffee culture, coffee and the popcorn, that combination, you have these wooden benches on the side of the road with the horseshoe setup where people just sit around and have coffee, and then the injera. It's just such a special place.
Yeah, man, thank you very much. I mean, it is. I mean, I think it's one of the nostalgic kind of thing that kept me here. It's so much to relate to. And yeah, man, I even get emotional whenever yeah, for like whenever I think about this nation. It's just sometimes it just makes you feel sad, like we could have been better, because of this cultures and the complexity of it, the depth of the people, the diversity of it. It's kind of it's very heartwarming, I would say. But of course, we have our challenges. But what you said is, I think, what makes Ethiopia Ethiopia at the end of the day. And yeah, and of course, better days would come for Ethiopia. Maybe not in my lifetime, but I'm sure, yeah, there'll be changes in other aspects as well. Like we would have a nation that is as beautiful as the culture. And the one good thing is the palaces, both of them are open. King Menelik's and also Haile Selassie's palace are now open for visitors as well. So you can get
Okay.
to visit that. It would be a bit of history.
Will you take me?
Of course, definitely.
I'll take you. You're on tape. You have to take me.
Exactly, definitely. And so long as you have the time, man. So long.
Oh, what would I be doing? Like, what would I be doing that's more important than that? Just to see
Exactly.
those palaces. I mean, yeah, I'll have the time.
Running workshops? I don't know. You tell me. So, hey, man, it's been great. But yeah,
You have to get to bed.
thank you for having me on. I may not be the best speaker or may not have the best values, but I had my opinions, you know. That's,
Maybe let's do this again. I mean, and also, I don't know if this gets in or not, but also thank you for allowing me to do this. I mean,
anytime,
I've
man.
been I've been struggling, and you just really came and well, I have my examples from ice skating. I don't know if that's a good example for an Ethiopian, but
Yeah.
you were like I was like a kid that fell on my butt, and you just picked me up and said, "You go, you can skate." Like you go, you do this, and I believe in you, and so I'm very thankful to you, man.
I mean, like anytime, man. It's like this is what I want Ethiopia to be, like some, where we can kind of inspire work, we can support work, we can, that would be a beautiful utopia, because there would be 135 million of us that can work with people like you. Because for us, we're also learning, we're also understanding, we're also supporting someone that has so much potential, that can share a lot of knowledge in any area of your field. So yeah, man, it's also something that we're happy to do, or I'm happy to do. It's a wonderful idea if getting people to discuss about such things, because social media has been very much saturated. Like I said, early on, it's very unreal, and sometimes it's really good to have, whether someone listens to it or not, it's just you've done your part, you've done your share of meaningful kind of contributions, and I'm so happy that you even trusted us to support, and I'm very thankful for that as well.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You need to go to sleep, huh?
Yeah, at some point in time,
At
yeah.
some point. At some point. Listen, I've had also in the last couple of days some really interesting conversations with other Ethiopians, and it's just for me such a such a cool place. I'll set up the WhatsApp group for the workshop.
Yeah, I've talked to One Day and Rich today, and I think I'm meeting with Rich on Wednesday as well. So yeah, that's happening. One Day said he's happy to kind of co-work with that, and so like I said, neutralizing it with Emilia Cred is I think the best direction, and it would be good to put Elvis on the Ethiopian map. Maybe it would give you your own region. You never know.
Where's the best injera?
I mean, like
Is that
Ethiopia is
Kaleab?
like really depends on where you go, but like this is the source of the best injera because it sources from different areas of like the teff that is used to kind of make it. So at this, I would say is comfortably you'd find the best injeras there. But the best injera is the ones that are made at home because there is care and love for it. Yeah, happy to share the ones at home as well.
Please
So
do.
yeah.
Please do. Yeah. I'll keep you. You made two promises now.
Definitely, man.
So
That's what
I'll keep you. I'll keep you on here. I'll keep you on here for a
Yeah,
little
and then
longer. Let's see
I've
what else
known to
comes.
have a really good track record of keeping my word. So far, I hope. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, God willing.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you very much for having me.
It was a great conversation.
It was.
Took us far and wide. Would love to do this again, man.
Definitely, man. Happy to kind of chisel this out a bit better, maybe. But yeah, this was a really good for a first session. I really liked it.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you.